Hey there, I'm Avid. Welcome to the audiobook of my original story, Anthrostate vs. Isekai Hero. This is a non-profit fan project made just for fun and shared for free. Before we start, I want to let you know that since I'm not fluent in speaking English yet, the narration is AI generated. I hope you still enjoy the story and the world I've created. Thanks for listening.
Chapter 1. I Need a Beer. Point of View. Marcus Carvalho. The temple shook, its ancient stones creaking as the volcano's fury echoed through the chamber. Lava spat and hissed through the cracks, casting an eerie glow on the walls carved by a now-forgotten civilization. In the center of this scenario of calamity, I found myself, breathing irregularly and my sword firmly gripped. In front of me was the reason I had been summoned to this world. Lilium, the demon lord, stared at me, his eyes glowing with hellish flames and a cruel smile on his lips. "This world will be mine." Lilium growled, her voice booming like a storm. "You won't win, Rift Wanderer." She smiled when he used the term given to people from the other world. "Fuck you," I screamed, jumping towards the creature. The black stone floor shattered beneath my feet due to the force of the jump, similar to a bomb explosion. My blade sang, cutting through the air, like a silver missile. Lilium tries to defend himself, bringing a giant claw to collide with my weapon. The impact reverberates through my bones, but I ignore the pain and spin in the air. "Die, lava bitch," I screamed, cutting off the demon's hand. Roarg. The demon roared at the loss of his limb.
POF.
When the gigantic hand fell to the ground with a loud thud, I managed to move away to catch my breath, while the demon lord stared at me. "Why do you help these humans, Marcus?" Lilium growled, his voice thundering like a storm. "You are not of this world. You owe nothing to the humans who inhabit it." I laughed, the sound echoing off the stone walls. "Isn't it obvious? Being ice-guyed into a fantasy realm, gaining powers, and then killing the demon lord is a dream come true." I ended up laughing out loud, as if my body wasn't burning with pain. Lilium's eyes narrowed, and his smile disappeared. "You dare to mock me?" "Mocking you? No, sir, I'm just stating the facts. This is the ultimate adventure, and I'm going high-scored this shit." The demon lord's fury exploded, his form growing larger. Lava and fire exuded from his body, like a hellish machine. "You will pay for your insolence." With a roar that shook the temple within the volcano, Lilium charged forward, his remaining claw slicing through the air. I jumped just in time, feeling the wind of his attack. The ground shook as he landed, the impact sending cracks snaking across the ground. "Is that all you have?" I taunted, jumping off the wall to the other side as yet another blow came. One of the temple arches collapsed in response, the roof threatening to collapse. Lilium's eyes burned more intensely, his anger palpable. "D." In response, Toy laughed, with adrenaline and magic coursing through my veins. "NOP." I replied happily. With a scream, I rushed towards him, my sword shining like the sun, cutting through the darkness and fire that the demon lord brought. He moved to meet me, his remaining claw aiming for my heart.
Boom.
The impact was like a train collision. I felt the bones in my leg break, my ribs cracked, and the muscles throughout my body ached as if I were being tortured with thousands of hot needles. But I kept pushing, my blade digging into Lilium's flesh.
Tatsist.
I growled, spitting out blood. Mid. Lilium collapsed, her eyes widening in shock. He looked down, seeing my sword sticking out of his chest. "Impossible," he muttered, his voice weak. "I know," I responded, taking a step back, my sword leaving his body. I usually wait until the third date to rearrange someone's guts. Lilium fell to his knees, his body beginning to disintegrate, returning to the darkness from which he came. In silence I watched him, my aching body that was only standing due to my equipment and other buffs. "Why?" he began, looking at me with eyes full of confusion. "Because I'm awesome," I replied, a smile forming on my face. Lilium let out a sigh, her body disappearing completely. I fell to my knees, the pain finally catching up with me. But I smiled, knowing I had done the right thing. The sword light intensified as the temple crumbled, as the volcano finally exploded. What an epic death, I said, closing my eyes, waiting for the end. My only regret is not spending more time with Ira. But the end never came. The white sword glow grew, covering my body completely. When I opened my eyes, I was standing on a busy street, cars passing by, people talking on their smartphones. Looking down, I see that my armor is all damaged from the battle against the demon lord, but my sword is nowhere to be found. The fuck? I mumbled in frustration. I'm not in Anorak anymore. As I looked around looking for the sword, I noticed them. Women are different, and it wasn't one or two. All of them are different from normal women, and all of them have one thing in common. They are all anthropomorphic creatures, humanoid beings that had characteristics of human women with something else. In this case, they are half animals. They look like beast folk from Anorak, I muttered to myself. I smiled, realizing where I was. I had been ice-skied again, this time to a modern world that was not my original one. I need a beer, I muttered dejectedly. Maybe 15. Point of view, Edith Nivea. What a horrible day, I murmured, walking down the dirty street. I walked painfully down the dirty street, the injustices of the day still playing on my conscience. The supervisor's voice echoing in the back of my mind. You are responsible for this, Edith. Fix it. I repeated, imitating her voice. Fix what? The mess that Garit made? The parts that never arrived. I spoke to myself in the middle of the street as if I were crazy. I sighed tiredly, holding myself back from breaking down crying. On the horizon the sun was setting, but the streetlights had not yet come up, casting long, dancing shadows. The wind blows over my white fur, bringing a bad smell that makes the primal side of my brain panic. With that warning, I swallowed hard and moved on with my heart beating like that of a scared little rabbit that I am. Please, 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 please. I repeated it like a prayer. May they not be coming towards me. Despite my prayers, 3 large figures appeared around the corner. 3 anthros hyenas, their laughter echoing off the cobblestones, eyes shining with mischief. I lowered my head, tried to run past, hoping they wouldn't notice me. But luck was not on my side today. It wasn't from the moment I clocked into work. Look what we have here. The taller one scoffed, her snout pulled back in a smile that showed lots of teeth. A little white bunny all alone? Her companions surrounded me, blocking any attempt to escape. I could feel his eyes on me, hungry and cruel. I gripped my backpack tighter, as if the act would somehow stop them. Please, I whispered. I just want to go home. The tallest one laughed, a harsh barking sound. Home, is it? All is well then. She reached out, her eyes fixed on my backpack. Give me your backpack and your cell phone. If you do, we'll leave you alone. The hyenas approached. I could feel my breathing quickening, my throat drying out. In my backpack was my paycheck for the week, everything I had, what I needed to pay my late rent. After all, I had spent everything I had on pieces for my personal projects, and now, without that money, I was lost. Please, I begged, my voice shaking. I need my backpack. The hyenas just laughed, a sadistic, screeching sound echoing off the empty walls of the street. The tallest one approached me, her cruel gaze fixed on mine. She raised her hand, and I could see her fist clenching, preparing to strike. No, I screamed, raising my arms to protect my face, but it was no use. I felt the pain explode in my face, making me fall to my knees and see everything white. Tears started to run down my cheeks as I tasted blood in my mouth. The hyenas continued to laugh, taking my backpack. Pain radiated from my cheek, spreading like fire across my face. I tasted blood, metallic and warm, as it dripped from my lip. The hyenas' laughter echoed around me, a cruel symphony that seemed to mock my despair. Feeling the cold pavement, I looked at the imposing figures that surrounded me like vultures. Please, I begged once more, my voice barely above a whisper. Please give it back. The tallest hyena, her eyes shining with mischief, leaned in, her breath hot on my face. Give it back, she repeated, laughing loudly. You're comedy gold, Bunny. Tears ran down my face, mixing with the blood. I felt a wave of dread wash my body, a primal need to escape, to find safety. But there was nowhere to go, no one to help. I was alone, at the mercy of these monsters. Help! I tried to scream, my voice hoarse with fear. Someone please help me. The hyenas laughed louder, their voices a chorus of cruelty. They fed on my terror, their eyes shining with sick satisfaction. I felt my heart pounding in my chest, a frantic beat that seemed to echo through the empty street. No one is coming to save you, Bunny. The tallest hyena sneered. This is our turf, and you are alone. Ignoring the offender's words, I gathered all my remaining strength and screamed as loud as I could.
Please.
Someone help me. The scream was so loud that it made the hyenas hesitate for a moment. The smallest of them even took a step back, but after a few seconds of silence, they started laughing loudly again. I looked down, tears and drops of blood splashing onto the cold pavement. I was alone and helpless. Just as I was about to be swallowed by despair, something warm and soft enveloped me. I looked up, my vision blurred by tears, and saw someone standing in front of me. The figure wore shining armor that seemed to radiate light. When my vision cleared, I noticed that he had placed a cape, red and sparkling like fire, around my shoulders. Gently, he rested his hand on my head. A comforting warmth spread through me that seemed to chase away the cold and fear. I felt my wounds healing, the pain receding like a tide. I looked at my savior's helmeted face, but all I could see was a bright light that seemed to emanate from within. I can't believe a literal knight in shining armor came to save you. Comments the smaller hyena. This is the kind of thing only little boys dream about. The hyena leader grumbled. You are a disgrace to all anthros. The shining armored figure approached the hyenas, his presence imposing and authoritative. The hyenas, once so confident and cruel, now hesitated, their laughter turning into uncertain growls. The tallest hyena, the one that attacked me, took a step back, eyes narrowing as it assessed this new threat. Who the hell are you? She growled, her voice drenched in fear and anger. The armored figure did not hesitate. He stepped forward, his voice echoing with a calm authority that gave me goosebumps. I don't like hitting women, he said, his tone slightly mocking. But I make exceptions for bitches like you. The hyenas exchanged glances, their confidence visibly shaken. The leader seemed determined to maintain her dominance. She bared her teeth, a low growl rumbling in her chest. I'll open you and rape you in the middle of the street. She challenged, her voice shaking slightly. The shining armored figure didn't draw a sword or clench his fists, as I expected. Instead, he stepped forward, his movements fluid and confident. He grabbed the taller hyena by the throat with his left hand, pulling her to be his head level. Confused and wide-eyed in shock and fear, her previous bravado evaporating like mist in the morning sun. I don't like those who abuse the weak. His voice was calm, but it contained a steely seriousness that gave me goosebumps. The hyena struggled, her legs kicking wildly at the armored figure's body, but he kept his grip firmly. Then he raised his right arm and did something that neither I nor the hyena expected. Smack! He slapped the hyena in the face. What? The hyena babbled, confused. Smack! Once again, he slapped her in the face, the sound echoing throughout the street. Smack! Stop! Shouted the hyena. Why are you doing this? Smack! Doing what your father or pimp should have done to you, said the armored figure. Teaching you some manners. Each blow echoed through the empty street like a gunshot. The sound was harsh, brutal, but there was a strange satisfaction in seeing her humiliated, his cruelty turned against her. Stop! She tried to scream once more, her voice cracking with fear and pain.
Please stop.
The hyena continued, starting to cry. But the figure did not stop. He continued to slap her, each blow measured and deliberate. The other hyenas watched in horror, their laughter long forgotten. They exchanged nervous glances, not knowing what to do. Do you think this is funny? He asked, his voice cold and threatening. The hyena whimpered, tears streaming down his face. She tried to speak, but her words were lost in a sob. The armored figure finally stopped, his hand still holding his throat. He leaned closer to her, his voice coming out as a low growl. "If I see you or your friends harassing innocent people, I won't be so merciful." He quickly released her. The once so proud chief hyena fell to the ground sobbing and whimpering. The other hyenas backed away, their eyes wide with fear. They turned and fled, their laughter replaced by the sound of their retreating footsteps. The armored figure turned to me, his eyes softening. He extended his hand, helping me to my feet. I looked at him, gratitude and admiration filling my heart. I stood there, stunned and overwhelmed, as the figure in shining armor released me from its grip. My heart raced, a strange mix of emotions swirling inside me. Admiration, yes, but also a strange, unfamiliar feeling that I couldn't identify. I looked at the figure, his eyes softening as he helped me to my feet. He was tall, his broad shoulders and strong jaw framed by his shiny helmet. His voice, deep and resonant, echoed through the silent street. "Thanks," I whispered, my voice shaking with emotion. He raised an eyebrow, a hint of amusement in his eyes. "For what?" he asked in a less gallant, more relaxed tone. I hesitated, my mind racing. I couldn't tell him the truth, not about the strange feelings that were beginning to stir inside me. "For saving me," I said sheepishly, my voice barely above a whisper. He chuckled, a warm, genuine expression that made my heart flutter. "You don't need to say thank you," he said in a happy tone. "Helping others is in my job description." I swallowed hard, my throat tightening. "But you're a man," I stuttered, my voice barely above a whisper. "It is not right for a woman to depend on a man to be saved." "Why?" he asked, confused. "Are you one of those feminists with colorful hair and hairy armpits who can't stand help from men?" "Feminist," I repeated without understanding the term. "It's always been that way. Anthro women protect human men." Through the visor of his armor, I could see the eyes wide in surprise staring into space. The man in armor fell to his knees. "Are you okay?" I asked, approaching him. "Oh fuck," he muttered in astonishment. Did I really come to furry heaven? He seemed so sad and depressed. It would be rude of me not to offer help, especially after he saved me. "If you need anything," I dashed. He quickly gets up and grabs me by the shoulders.
Ipe.
I yelped in fright. "Do you have beer?" Chapter 2. Gold and Jewelry. Point of view. Edith Nivea.
Beep. Beep.
I murmured, waking up tired.
Beep. Beep.
Damn alarm clock. I grumbled, turning off the infernal device. Despite being tired, I quickly got out of bed to get ready. As I brushed my teeth, I remember last night's dream. A knight in shining armor, his face obscured by a gleaming helmet, had saved me from an assault. It was exciting, exhilarating, and totally embarrassing. Good grief, Edith. I spoke to myself looking in the mirror. You're a grown-up anthro, for goddess's sake, not a little human boy dreaming of fairy tales. I shook my head, trying to forget the ridiculous fantasy. I'm a mechanical engineer, working for the government. I spoke, puffing out my chest with pride. Other anthros would kill to be in my place. I don't need a knight to save me. Quickly, I put on my overalls and grabbed my backpack, leaving the room. Silly dream, I said, shaking my head. Like a man could fight off 3 hyenas and then come to a single anthro's house to drink all night. "Hair!" I a peep. I screamed in fright, throwing myself behind the sofa. What is that?" The noise sounded like a wild boar being drowned in a puddle of mud. Demon, a slightly familiar male voice stammered. I get up shaking from behind the sofa and see the being responsible for the frightening noise. "Impossible!" I exclaim with my jaw dropped. It wasn't a dream. My knight in shining armor was lying there snoring on my couch, covered in beer cans and empty fast food bags. "Jeez," I mutter under my breath. I thought he would be an elegant nobleman, but now he looks like a drunken hobo. He sleeps still dressed in his armor, and when I get closer I notice that it is all damaged with claw marks, punctures, and stains of dried blood in abundance. What kind of life does he live? I asked in a whisper. The poor guy was hungry and tired yesterday. I think I will let him sleep. I'll leave a note before I leave for work. I commented on taking paper and pen. I quickly scribbled a message and placed the note on the coffee table, only to then I walk out the door, taking one last look at the unconscious knight. Despite his current state, there was something undeniably attractive about him. I could still see the fierce warrior who saved me from those hyenas. I blushed, pushing the thoughts away. As I was still saving money to buy a car, I had to go by bus once again, which is always fun. I thought ironically. After all, an anthro rabbit like me always suffers in crowded places like public transport just because no one respects the little ones. After a long, cramped, and stinky journey, I arrive at my destination. Anthrostate's research and development building towered in front of me, an imposing structure of steel and glass, making the building look like a fortress. I walked in, waving to security as I passed. They were both anthros, a rhino and a bear, their uniforms straining against their muscular bodies. It must be good, being big and strong like that. I smiled with envy. After taking the elevator down in silence, I arrive at my laboratory floor. Despite being a laboratory, it was more accurate to call it a workshop or a garage, because even though we had state-of-the-art technological equipment, the place was dominated by a familiar smell of oil and metal that I was already so used to and relaxed my body. As soon as I turn on the lights, I hear a groan. "Fuck me," complains a female voice, hoarse from smoking too much cigarettes. "Just 5 more minutes." "Did you sleep here?" I asked, approaching the person lying in the middle of 2 armored vehicles. "What's your problem?" A virgin dwarf rabbit screaming at me. "Garit," the fat raccoon grumbled. I looked at Garit disapprovingly as she stood up. She is an anthro raccoon. Her fur was a patchwork of gray and black, with the distinctive mask around her eyes. She wears a grease-stained uniform that was open, showing off his large belly and large breasts being held up by a red sports bra. She stretched, yawning widely, displaying a mouth full of sharp teeth. "Garit, you can't keep sleeping here," I said, exasperated. "This is a workplace where we do research for the government, not a motel." Garit shrugged, scratching her belly. What's the matter?" she said, turning her back. "I do the work, don't I?" I sighed, knowing she was right. Garit was a lazy, foul-mouthed, and often irritating coworker, but she was also one of the most talented mechanics I've ever met. She had a knack for understanding machines, an intuition that couldn't be taught. She could hear an engine and know exactly what was wrong with it. "You're lucky you're good at your job," I muttered, walking to my workstation. "Otherwise, you would have been fired a long time ago." Garit laughed, following me. Yeah, she repeated tiredly. "I know you love me, bitch." Point of view, Marcus Carvalho. An icy wind whispered past me through the wooden planks, carrying the rotten odor of the swamp. The smell was no worse than whatever was being prepared in the large black cauldron in the center of this cursed hut. "So, you are the legendary Marcus Carvalho." A voice cackled in front of me. Sitting on the other side of the table was a hunched figure, old, skinny, with a wrinkled face. Classic look of an evil witch. "What brings you to my humble abode, great hero?" she murmured, looking deep into my soul. "I know your fame, Kuka the Fate Weaver." I stopped as the witch laughed at her own title. "I need your help." "Rumors are not always true, young hero," said the witch, leaning back in her chair. "Perhaps my powers are not up to your request." Facing the old creature, I swallow hard, preparing myself for what it might ask for in payment. "I want the power to locate anyone." The witch stared back at me with wide eyes, surprised by my request. "You know you're asking for a lot, hero?" I replied, nodding my head. "To give you this power, I would need to give up my greatest treasure." I lowered my eyes, staring at the table, overcome by a familiar melancholy. "I will keep my promise, Toira," I responded, staring at the witch more intensely. "Name your price." The old woman laughed loudly, as if she were the villain in a fairy tale, not ashamed to show her rotten and broken teeth. "Your emotions touched me," she said, calming down. "But as payment, I want you to really touch me." "Say what?" I asked, confused. "I want you to touch me," she said slowly, getting up from the table. "Here," shouted the witch, opening her tunic, revealing the horror. "No!" I screamed, waking up from the terrible nightmare. I woke up jumping up from the couch, knocking empty beer cans onto the floor, and my heart pounding like a war drum. The remnants of the nightmare still tormented me, the laugh of that damned old woman echoing in my mind. "Get your hand off my dick, Velha Tirada," I shouted, still agitated. But luckily for me, the smell of old beer and fast food filled my nostrils, calming me and bringing me back to reality. Phew, I sighed in relief. That was the worst mission ever. I grumbled, stretching. I deserved a harem just because of that one. Looking around, I remember that I slept in the white bunny house I met yesterday, being robbed by the Lion King's hyenas. And her name is, oh shit, I forgot. Is it racist if I call her Lola or Judy Hopps? As I was rambling about matters of extreme importance, I noticed a note on the coffee table. I murmur, taking the note. "Esteemed Lord Knight, I address your lordship to express my most sincere gratitude for the noble act of saving my life. I also ask that you accept my most humble apologies for the discourtesy of leaving you alone in a stranger's home. However, my presence at work is essential, which forced me to leave urgently. I ask that you feel completely free to enjoy the comforts of my residence and help yourself to everything you find available in my refrigerator and pantry. My return is only scheduled for nightfall. With high esteem for your person, Edith Nivea. Iya," I exclaimed in realization, reading her name. But why did she do this elaborate letter? The girl said all this to say that she had gone to work, that I can eat what is here, and that she will be back in the evening. It took up the entire page to write on. Even turned the gloss over to see if there was anything written on the back, but it was blank. Why did she write like that? I questioned myself in astonishment. It even seemed like she was talking to some kind of king or noble, and that was when I noticed that I was still wearing my shiny Empyreanite armor. The armor glows in any light like a radiant and soft white, like moonlight reflected off water, emanating a soft but constant luminescence. The color of the metal itself is a pure silvery white with pale gold tones, almost as if sunlight and starlight are woven into the very essence of the metal. I laughed awkwardly at the situation. At least I wasn't wearing my Hellsteel armor. She might have sacrificed a goat as thanks. Putting down the letter, I come across the mess I left at the poor bunny's house. The 24 cans of beer that I had drunk were littering the place, while the packages and bags of fast food certainly attracted cockroaches if I didn't get rid of them properly. Wow, this girl is an angel. I mumble embarrassedly. She took me home, spent a lot on beer and DoorDash, and on top of that gave me access to her fridge. I look around once again, noticing the trash. And how does this animal here reward her? Trash in her living room. The mature and right thing to do is to clean everything carefully, showing my consideration for her. Fuck that noise. I will use magic. I closed my eyes, taking deep breaths to access my mana reserves. My inner ocean was completely chaotic due to my fight against Demon Lord Lilium, but for a simple activity, like cleaning this wouldn't be a problem. Mana that inhabits my being, hear my call. Shape the trash into a sphere, compact it small. Gather the waste, compress it tight. By magic's will, let clutter take flight. The room shook and hummed with energy reverberating throughout the room. Beer cans and fast food wrappers rose from the ground, floating in a chaotic dance before merging and compressing into a small sphere. Perfect, I muttered, picking up the sphere of trash smaller than a tennis ball. Maziner. The sphere disappears from my hand, being stored in the portable dimension of the inventory. Morn would be bitching my ear off about the negligent use of magic, but it's quicker that way. I murmured, remembering my old teacher. Looking around, I see the clean house, and with a feeling of accomplishment, I finally start to process the situation I find myself in. After being reincarnated from Earth to Galbraza, I was transported to this new world. I muttered to myself. A melancholy feeling came over me, finally realizing that I was alone again. And this time, I don't even have a new father or a mother to help me adapt to the new circumstances. Why does everything have to be so complicated? I grumbled, sitting down on the now spotless couch. The room was silent except for the ticking of a wall clock. Each tick seemed to echo my thoughts, amplifying the loneliness. I've lived in Galbraza for so long that I can barely remember my college friends from my first life. Thank God I still remember my parents and brother. At least for now I have a roof over my head. I thought, trying to find a positive point. But the reality was that I was lost, without direction. In Galbraza, I had a purpose, a mission. Here, I was just a stranger in a land that didn't belong to me. Now, what do? I asked myself, looking into space. If this world is like my original Earth, I will need documents, a cell phone, and, of course, money. I got up from the couch and walked to the window, looking at the street outside. Cars passed by. People walked quickly, human men and furry women. Do they call themselves furries? I questioned myself uncertainly. I think the bunny used some other term. I try to remember how she defined herself, but yesterday I was very tired, injured, and hungry. I don't even remember what I did to her robbers. I hope I didn't kill them. I spoke in a somber tone. Unlike a fantasy world, I don't get rid of a murder conviction with the excuse that it was a duel, or he was the one who pulled the sword first. I continued observing the street until inspiration appeared in my mind. First I need money, then I'll have to figure out what the hell I have to do in this world. I say, puffing out my chest, deciding to act instead of crying depressed on the couch. I've been through this before, just do the grind to get the money, get contacts, and pick up some hot girls along the way. With my spirits renewed, I turn around, walking purposefully towards the door of the house, where I stop as soon as I notice a small problem with my plan. If there are no monsters and demons for me to kill and get rewards, how am I going to make money? Point of view, Edith Nivea. I leaned over the touch screen. Blueprints for the silent electric tank lay open before me. The intricate drawings and calculations usually held my attention, but today my mind was elsewhere. The image of the night roaring like a V8 engine while sleeping on my couch kept invading my thoughts. The man who saved me from those hyenas and then passed out in a sea of empty cans and fast food wrappers. I tapped the screen, adjusting a small detail on the blueprint, but my heart wasn't in it. My fingers traced the lines absent-mindedly as I tried to decipher the armor puzzle pieces sleeping in my house. I knew he was exhausted because the moment the food arrived, he devoured it without even taking off his helmet and then collapsed on the couch. The bloodstains on his armor were dry, but still looked fresh. You mean he had a big battle recently? Edith, are you okay? Asked Garit, who approached without me noticing. Yeah, just a lot on my mind, I replied, forcing a smile. It's normal for you to be a little disconnected, but it's usually because you're focused on a project, she said, crossing her arms, examining me with suspicion. But that pen barely touched the screen. What's distracting you? And no, nothing much, I replied, stuttering. Rent and other personal things, you know. Garit raised an eyebrow, his expression turning mischievous. Personal stuff, huh? Like a guy. I felt my cheeks flush and quickly looked away. No, it's not like that. I tried to deny it, but it was too late. Garit laughed triumphantly, approaching me. There's no point trying to hide it from me, girl. I know that look. You have that vibe of a virgin girl in love. Hurry up and spill it to your gal here. I sighed, knowing there was no point in denying it. Maybe there could be someone, but it's complicated. Garit's eyes widened with excitement. Complicated? She asked, smiling. Even better. Tell me everything. I sighed, feeling the weight of the previous night's events settle on my shoulders. Garit's eyes were wide with anticipation, his tail twitching with excitement. I knew she wouldn't let this go until I told her everything. Okay. I conceded, rubbing my temples. I'll tell you what happened. Point of view, Marcus Carvalho. If killing monsters to get rewards wasn't a valid alternative, then I went after the second option for an RPG hero to get money. Selling items. I already told you, kid, said the old boar in front of me. I'm not buying that shit from an unmarked man. Fuck who I am, these pearls are legit. I replied with a frown. I thought it would be easy to get the money, since I had an absurd amount of gold and jewelry in my inventory. In fact, I had an absurd amount of things like weapons, armor, potions, scrolls, magical items, summoning crystals, vehicles. I had everything in my inventory, everything except normal clothes. That's why I was still wearing armor. Listen here, you kin nerd, Boar said mockingly. I don't want the eyes of the state on me for buying merchandise from a single male. And to make matters worse, you don't have a certificate or even a receipt for that necklace. I'm not going to risk it for some crazy slut like you. Groaning irritably, I took the necklace back. And how about gold? She murmured, showing interest. Much better. I can melt it down to make it harder to trace back to you. I can also check the authenticity of the gold right here, but if it's fake or just a few crumbs, you'll have to pay me for the loss of materials to check the authenticity. Facing the disgusting fat woman, I pretend to take 10 gold coins from my waist, as if they were in a pocket. Take it, I declared, dropping the coins on the counter. The boar's eyes dilated, looking at the cup-holder-sized coins. I will be back in a moment, she said, taking the coins and going to test them in a room at the back. I stood there, alone in the store, while the boar tested my coins. The place was a mess, crammed with all sorts of junk on shelves and scattered across the floor. Old TVs, dusty laptops, and a hodgepodge of antiques filled every corner. I scanned the room, taking in the details. Old movie posters and concert flyers covered the walls, their edges yellowed with age. A clock on the wall ticked loudly, its hands moving in a slow, steady rhythm. The air was thick with the smell of dust and old electronics, a stark contrast to the fresh, open air of the battlefields I was accustomed to. My eyes fell on a stack of newspapers near the counter. I caught one with the headline screaming something about a political scandal. But it wasn't the headline that caught my attention, it was the date and currency symbol. Carol Hopora. The date was 2024, and the prices were all in dollars. I flipped through the pages, my heart pounding, but I found nothing that contradicted this information. So, does that mean I'm in the United States? I asked myself in surprise. Or, at least a furry version of country. I put the newspaper back, my mind racing. Why did I end up here? I whispered, confused. The boar came out of the back room, her eyes shining with excitement. These are real, she said, holding up one of the coins. These are 100-gram 24K gold coins. I can offer you $1,000 for each one. I nodded, suspicious that they were worth more, but for those in need, half is worth two.
Deal.
Her hand went to the cash drawer, but I stopped her. Before you give me the money, I would like to buy some things. She smiled at me, pleased that she was going to get rid of some of the merchandise with me, instead of giving it all to me in cash. What you need, boy. I smiled, leaning over the counter. What everybody needs: money, a cell phone, and of course documents. Documents, she repeated, confused. Yes. I responded by nodding my head. Do you know anyone who can forge them? Surprised by my question, the boar stopped to look around to see if there was anyone else in the store, and as soon as she was sure we were alone, she asked me, You have no idea of what you are asking, boy. Bitch, please. I've played poker with demons and a fairy. In response, she stares at me with her mouth open, shocked by my statement. Did you forget to take any medicine today? She asked with genuine concern. Or took it more than you should have. Fuck you, you rotten piece of bacon. The boar's nostrils flared and her eyes narrowed as she placed a small box on the counter. Here's your damn phone, and in that box in the corner there's some clothes. Feel free to have a look. After spending a few minutes looking through the box that didn't have any good options, I separated 4 t-shirts and 2 jeans. Don't you have any sneakers? I have no shoes that fit a male's foot, said the boar, reading the newspaper without looking me in the eye. Noticing that she was already fed up with me, I took my money, clothes, cell phone, and a wallet to store the money. Do you have a place for me to change? This isn't a mall. she replied dryly. Breathe, Marcus. I thought to myself, remember that you can't blow up this store claiming it had a volcanic slime infestation. If you've already finished, fuck off. Is a gas leak a good excuse? Point of view, Edith Nivea. I pushed open the front door. My shoulders slumped with the weight of the day. My mind buzzed with the remains of Garit's incessant chatter, her laughter still ringing in my ears. That fat raccoon had turned a difficult day into an unbearable one, her constant interruptions destroying any hope of concentration. While mumbling mentally, I entered the living room. I was prepared for the chaos of cans and fast food packages. My goodness! I exclaimed in surprise. But the place was impeccable. No cans or fast food packaging in sight. The coffee table sparkled, and the sofa cushions were neatly arranged. Had the night cleaned everything up? I thought to myself. The thought seemed absurd, given that he would have a bad hangover today after drinking so much. As I take another step, something else catches my attention, something written in orange chalk on my wall. I approach it and read it out loud. Shadow M. Forecus 69. I speak out loud in confusion. It looks like an MMORPG username. Suddenly, without warning, the letters began to glow. I took a step back, my heart pounding as the orange letters pulse with a neon orange glow. The light intensified, casting frightening shadows across the room. A sudden flash blinded me, and for a moment, everything went white. When my vision returned, I gasped. Standing before me, as if materialized out of nowhere, was the knight. His armor, despite being damaged, shined proudly. Sir Knight, I whispered, my voice barely audible. What is happening? He looked down, staring at me with those emerald green eyes shining through the slits of his helmet. Hey Lola, he said with a smile. Lola. I'm sorry, Edith, he said with a sarcastic laugh. But I needed to make that joke at least once. Finishing speaking, he bent down and picked up a cardboard box with clothes and some plastic bags. Do you mind if I use your kitchen? He asked, turning his back, walking towards the kitchen. Of course not, Sir Knight. He stops halfway and turns to me. So, he began to speak in an awkward tone. Don't call me that, my name is Marcus Carvalho. I widened my eyes, embarrassed that I had only now learned his name. Yes, it's a great pleasure to meet you, Mr. Mr. Carvalho. Come on, Coelhinia, he said, entering the kitchen. You saved my life yesterday. You can call me Marcus. Did I save your life? I repeated, confused. Marcus began unpacking the groceries, placing the ingredients on the counter with a precision that surprised me. He moved with a familiarity that suggested he was no stranger to the kitchen. I leaned against the door, watching him, still processing the strangeness of the day. If it weren't for you, I wouldn't have survived yesterday, he said, without taking his eyes off the vegetables he was cutting. What do you mean? I asked, my voice drenched in uncertainty. He paused, turning to me. His green eyes had a gravity that made me catch my breath. I didn't look like it, but I was in bad shape. Marcus said in a more serious tone. Punctured lungs, broken ribs, broken leg and arm, stomach, and some other organs were destroyed as well. But you looked so strong. I protested, remembering how he had resisted those hyenas. Marcus smiled, with a hint of sadness in his eyes. Appearances can be deceiving. He turned to the counter, continuing his work. I could only move because of the magical enchantments on my armor and some buffs from other items and potions I had taken before. Magical enchantments? I murmur, widening my eyes. What are you talking about? I watched Marcus as he continued to season the meat, his movements fluid and confident. The smell of garlic and herbs filled the air, making my stomach growl. The kitchen, once a place of solitude, now seemed alive with his presence. The kind you find in magical items. He said it like it was no big deal. But magic doesn't exist. I responded in disbelief. It doesn't exist? Curious, Marcus asked. My magical items work normally and, pausing, he raises his own thumb, which is then engulfed in a pale, white light. My spells also work, But I noticed that there is no mana in the air. Doing rituals in this world must be a pain in the ass. No matter how much he continued talking, I heard nothing, because my jaw dropped at the revelation in front of me. Magic! I screamed in surprise. He laughs awkwardly in my direction. I think it's best to start with a formal introduction, but I'll give you the short version of it. Marcus moves away from the bench and approaches me. With his right fist clenched, he hits his chest and begins to speak. I am Marcus Aurelio Rubro Carvalho, chosen by the goddess Hemiliara, champion of the White Steel Vanguard, defender of Galbraza, liberator of dwarves from Grakafin, master of the luminous Vorpal sword, chief of the Black Fong tribe, conqueror of the Bloody Plateau, Duke of the Iron Alps, the anathema of hell, chosen of the elder dragons, emissary of the ethereal fae, and my last and now favorite title, the executioner of the demon Lord Lilium. Once again my jaw dropped. I had so many questions, but I couldn't organize my thoughts to ask them. Would it be easier to understand if I said I was an Isekai hero? My jaw started to hurt from falling so much today. Are you like one of those heroes who is reborn in a fantasy world? He just smiled and nodded. Unable to contain my excitement, I approach him and excitedly grab his arm. You mean you learned magic, faced dragons, saved princes, met elves and dwarves? Yes to all. He responds, laughing loudly, caressing my head. The affectionate gesture makes me realize how close I am and that I'm also holding onto his arm. I jump back. I'm sorry, Mr. Carvalho. I speak in a sincere tone. In response, he just laughs, saying it's no big deal. He quickly finishes cooking and sets the table. For dinner today, we have potatoes au gratin, picanha steak, lettuce salad with tomato and steamed carrots. My stomach growled, wanting food. Sorry, I spoke, completely embarrassed. But once again, he smiled, saying it was no big deal. I cut into the tender meat, the juices pooling on my plate. I took the first bite to my lips, the flavors exploding in my mouth. It was unlike anything I had ever tasted, rich, flavorful, and perfectly seasoned. This is incredible, I murmured, savoring the taste. Marcus smiled, his eyes shining with pride. I'm glad you liked it, he said, cutting into his own portion. I took another bite, the flavors dancing on my tongue. It was a meal fit for a king, and yet here it was, on my humble dining table. I swallowed hard, the heat of the food spreading through me, and then a thought occurred to me. Why did you do that? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. Marcus looked up, his fork stopping in midair. Did what? He asked, genuinely confused. This meal, I said, gesturing to the table in front of us. You clean my house too, why? Marcus set down his fork, his expression softening. I made the mess, so it's only fair that I clean it up myself. The meal is a way of saying thanks to you, but he paused with his voice changing to a heavier tone. I do admit, I have ulterior motives. I swallowed hard, the delicious meal suddenly turning to dust in my mouth. Marcus's words rang in my ears. I have ulterior motives. My heart pounded in my chest, a mix of fear and excitement coursing through my veins. No man has ever shown interest in me before. I was always the shy and quiet one, overshadowed by my taller, more confident and stronger colleagues. Ulterior motives? I managed to whisper, my voice barely audible. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his green eyes fixed on mine. The intensity of his gaze made me squirm, but I couldn't look away. Yes, he said, his voice steady and calm. You need to understand, Edith, that men have certain needs. I screamed mentally. You have no idea how long I've wanted this, he said, almost purring at me. By the goddess, his husky voice is so sexy, I'm going to end up sliding off my chair if he keeps talking like that. Eat a well-seasoned meal. Marcus's words hung in the air, and I couldn't help but feel a mixture of relief and disappointment. Eat a well-seasoned dish, I repeated, my voice barely above a whisper. Marcus leaned back in his chair, a small smile playing on his lips. You have no idea how rare spices are where I come from. In the other world, Magic may be abundant, but trade was not as developed. Spices were a luxury, even in the kitchens of royal castles. I blinked, trying to process his words. But you had magic. Couldn't you just conjure at them? He laughed, shaking his head. Magic can do many things, but it cannot replace the flavor of fresh herbs or the kick of a good pepper. Believe me, I tried. Really? I asked, still in disbelief. Yes. He responds between bites. I conquer a tribe of orcs just because they had access to garlic. I looked down at my plate, the rich aroma of the meal rising. The thought of a world without the simple pleasures of good food seemed almost unimaginable. So, have you known how to cook for a long time? I said, trying to change the subject to something lighter. Marcus nodded, his eyes shining with a memory. Before I was Isekai, my father taught me in my original world, one that didn't have anthros. I looked at Marcus, my fork halfway to my mouth, frozen in disbelief. Didn't have anthros? I echoed the words sounding strange and impossible. But how could this be? Marcus shrugged, taking another bite of his meal. In my original world, everyone is human. Men and women are all human. I put down my fork, my appetite suddenly disappearing. But that's impossible. How can a world function without anthros? We are the backbone of society, the leaders, the workers, the dash. I noticed that today. Marcus interrupted, his voice gentle but firm. My original world is different from yours in some ways. We have our own struggles, our own strengths. But anthros? They don't exist there. I shook my head trying to understand the concept. But how do men and women interact? I asked, my cheeks flushed slightly at the implication. Marcus laughed, a hearty sound that filled the room. I think the biggest difference is that in my world women are the fair gender, here it seems to be the opposite. I sat back in my chair, my mind racing. The idea of a world without anthros was terrifying and fascinating. How did they manage without our strength, our leadership? How did they deal with the absence of our unique perspectives and skills? It must be so different. I muttered, more to myself than to Marcus. A world without anthros is almost unimaginable. I wanted to ask him so much, but I decided to eat in silence, enjoying the mild weather. I don't need to ruin this wonderful moment with more questions. Tomorrow we can talk more. By the way, are you single? I peep. Marcus's question caught me off guard, and I almost choked on my food. My cheeks burned, and I felt my heart race once again. Luckily for me, the shrill sound of the phone ringing broke the silence.
Beep, beep.
Saved by the bell. I murmured, relieved. To my surprise, the device was ringing from Marcus' side of the table. Just a second, he says, getting up from the table. I strained to hear, but the person on the other end of the call spoke too quietly for me to understand any words, even with my bunny ears. Marcus's expression changed, his eyes narrowing as he listened intently. When did he buy a phone? I questioned mentally. Did he go out alone today? It was very dangerous for a male to walk alone on the street, especially if he didn't have a scent or bite mark. I understand. He murmured, his voice firm. I'll be there soon. He ended the call and turned to me, his face unreadable. I couldn't help but feel a pang of worry. Is everything fine? I asked curiously. Marcus nodded, but his eyes held a hint of concern. I have good news and bad news, he said, giving an embarrassed smile. The good news is that I found someone to forge documents good enough to open bank accounts. My goodness, I commented happily. That's amazing, but what's the bad news? Giving a forced laugh, Marcus responds awkwardly. Pretty sure they're the Chinese mafia. Chapter 3. Tournament Arc. Point of view. Edith Nivea. We're here, Marcus said, stopping in front of me. Are you sure it's here? I asked with uncertainty. Of course. He responded, confident that he was right. I glanced at the flashing neon sign above the double doors, the words Super Freedom Spin humming softly in the night air. Confused, I turned to Marcus, but before I could even ask him something, he answered. Criminal organizations, he said, pausing to let the words sink in. They need front businesses for their illegal operations. Places that appear legitimate, preferably with a lot of movement, to hide their profitable activities. Profitable activities, I repeated curiously. Illegal gambling, prostitution, drug and gun sales. I felt a shiver run down my spine. The thought of being involved in something so dangerous made my stomach turn. Usually they choose something related to cleaning or garbage collection, says Marcus, finishing explaining. How do you know that? I asked curiously. I think I saw that in an anime or Breaking Bad. Marcus responds with a shrug. Before I could question the veracity of his source, Marcus entered the room with me close behind, walking with purpose, chest puffed out, head high, looking around as if looking for something or someone. The place was a huge laundry, 8 rows of machines, and in the back there was a space with staff taking care of larger-scale orders. The place is frequented by customers of all types, anthro women and human men. The men were focused on washing the clothes they had brought, while the local anthros had stopped doing their laundry and were staring at Marcus with wide eyes. They looked not only at his form finally exposed without armor, with his strong and well-defined arms, golden brown skin on display, sparkling emerald green eyes, seductive smile, shiny brunette hair combed back and muscular chest being highlighted in his tight white shirt. What was I thinking again? I questioned myself, internally looking at Marcus and remembering. Oh, it's his shirt. Marcus got a change of clothes from the pawn shop where he went. The shirts, besides being tight, had vulgar sayings printed on them. That's why he's the center of attention of all the anthros in the place, with a white shirt printed with the capital letters, rape bait. And this was his least scandalous shirt. This situation can get any worse, I whispered, dying of shame. But I was wrong, it could get worse. Damn boy, said a mole construction worker, undressing Marcus with her eyes. Look at the lucky rabbit, shouted a panther in the distance. Atta girl, said a hyena, laughing loudly. He got a hot Latino and now she's showing him off. Let me put a fanger in ya, said a country bear.
Damn, baby.
Turn around and show mama what you're working with, said a mechanic boar. Hot damn, you're cute, howled a wolf biker. She may be small, but must have some pussy grip, said a cat smoking. It's not just the front, said a skunk near the entrance. Look at that ass, mama wants a bite. I stood there, frozen, as the comments flew around us like a hailstorm. Each word felt like a physical blow, and I could feel the heat rising in my cheeks. I was hoping for the shouts to end, but they just got worse. Damn, that does look good in dem jeans. Hey baby, you a grower or a shower? You're every chair's dream. I'd like to gargle those marbles. I would love to see him squirm beneath me. Yo baby, ever had your dick sucked from the back by a fat girl in an overcoat? I'd like to slap those buns on the grill. Hey thick dick Seymour baby. He's so hot. I bet he comes lava. Let me suck ya cock pretty boi. Chico, I want to eat your ass like pico de gallo. I cringed, feeling a mix of embarrassment and anger. How could they say those things in front of Marcus? I glanced at him, expecting to see disgust or anger on his face. Instead, he was smiling. This is crazy, Marcus comments, holding back a chuckle. I am really sorry, I told him, my voice barely audible over the noise of the machines and the chatter. They're horrible. He shrugged, his smile never wavering. Relax, Koelhinya. I'm enjoying this more than I should, he said, laughing. I looked at him, amazed. Does he like the attention? I thought silently. Is Marcus a whore? Before I could continue this horrible line of thought, Marcus stopped in front of an anthro buffalo wearing a white outfit and security identification standing near a reinforced fire door. What do you want, male? Said the big woman in an irritated tone. Marcus pulled out his cell phone and showed her a message. We received a message to look for Madame Sherhuan. The anthro buffalo's eyes widened. She quickly grabbed her walkie-talkie, shouting orders in a hoarse voice. I need a replacement at the entrance. I will escort visitors to Madame Sherhuan. The change in the security behavior seemed to be expected by Marcus, who chuckled softly at her reaction. The buffalo turned to us, her expression serious. "Follow me," she ordered, leading us down a dimly lit hallway. The noise from the laundry room subsided as the heavy, reinforced door closed behind us following the buffalo. She led us down a dimly lit staircase, the sound of our footsteps echoing off the cold concrete walls. I could feel the tension building with each step, my heart pounding in my chest. Marcus, on the other hand, looked as calm as ever, his eyes scanning his surroundings with a mix of curiosity and caution. How could he be so confident, especially dressed in that tight stripper shirt and denim shorts hugging his ass so tight? I thought to myself. Finally, we reached the bottom, entering a wide, well-lit hallway. Both sides of the hallway contained doors with a large gap between them, each one identical to the last. The corridor seemed to stretch on forever, the silence broken only by the sound of our footsteps and the distant hum of machinery. I could feel the weight of the building above us, the pressure increasing with each step. The air was thick with the smell of detergent and something else, something I couldn't identify. How far do we go? I questioned mentally. As we walked, I noticed that the doors were numbered, the numbers increasing as we went. I tried to keep up, but the numbers were confusing, my mind racing with 1,000 different thoughts. Finally, we reached the end of the hallway, where there was a large steel elevator door. The buffalo pressed a button on the wall, and the doors opened with a gentle touch. She entered, gesturing for us to follow her. I hesitated, looking at Marcus. "It's okay, Edith," he said, brimming with confidence. "I've got your back." I really am a pathetic woman for depending on a man to calm me down, I thought sadly. Taking a deep breath, I entered the elevator, the doors sliding closed behind us. The buffalo pressed another button, and the elevator began to descend. Point of view, Marcus Carvalho. Holy shit, where did I get myself into? I mentally swore, worried. Are we going to China to find this bitch? Who dug all the shit? Dwarven moles. But I wasn't going to show it. Edith was a nervous wreck, and I needed to keep her calm. The elevator doors opened, revealing a large garden bathed in a soft, twilight-like ambient light. A gentle breeze rustled the leaves of the surrounding trees, carrying the scent of blooming flowers. The centerpiece of the garden was a tranquil lake with a small waterfall whose water flowed down a rocky outcrop, creating a gentle melody that filled the air. As soon as I took a step into the garden, I received a warning. Detection alert. Aside from my inventory, it seems that the other parts of the system work. I thought silently. I need to test my powers later. I don't know if I have access to everything. You are being observed by 10 creatures with ill intent. With the last window informing me, I feel the intention coming from the ceiling. What was up there was hidden behind the spotlights that illuminate the place.
Wow.
Edith whispers, grabbing my attention. How can someone maintain such a large underground garden? With a lot of money. I responded by frowning. This isn't just a garden, it's a demonstration of power. Edith looked at me confused, but I didn't have time to explain to her, because next to the lake there was an elegantly set table with fine Asian china and a silver tea set. Sitting at the table was an anthro bobcat, her smooth gray fur contrasting with her piercing amber eyes. I was waiting for you, sir, she said in a neutral tone with zero emotions. Your companion, however, was not expected, but that is easy to rectify. With a snap of the bobcat's fingers, the buffalo that accompanied us brought an extra chair that was placed while the bobcat gestured for us to sit down. So, you are Madame Sherhuan? I asked curiously. Weirdly, she freezes for a second, as if taking a breath to respond. Yes. She spoke in the same neutral tone. I called you here to talk about your request. Documents capable of passing off as real with large institutions are difficult, but not impossible to obtain. But it will cost a lot, even for someone with access to gold coins, I imagine? In response, she simply nodded, confirming the information. Before I could ask any more questions about the documents, a figure joined us. An elderly anthro tigress. Her fur had little gray tufts in the middle of her orange and black stripes. She approached the table with a strange greenish teapot that looked familiar to me. Even with her advanced age, She moved with the grace of a seasoned predator, her eyes on the cups as she poured the steaming liquid with her thumb dancing lightly on the teapot's handle. "Please," said the bobcat, taking his cup. "Drink." Edith picked up her cup and tried to bring it to her lips, but I stopped her by holding her arm. "Marcus," she asked me, surprised. "I didn't want to do this," I commented, summoning a purple powder from my inventory to my hand. "But you started." With my last words, I threw the purple powder at the bobcat as the old anthro walked away from the table. The bobcat fell to the ground, laughing uncontrollably. "Marcus, what did you do?" she asked as the bobcat thrashed on the ground, laughing uncontrollably. I turned to Edith, my expression grave. "They tried to poison us, so I retaliated with a dose of euphoria powder." Edith's grip on the cup tightened, her knuckles turning white. But," she stuttered, too nervous to form a sentence. I gestured to the bobcat, now writhing on the ground, its laughter turning into hysterical sobs. "She's probably not even Madame Sherhuan." I picked up my cup of tea, and I drank it all in one gulp. "Marcus," Edith shouted in fright. "Poison detected. Poison neutralized." "I knew it," I murmured, opening a smile. "Analyzing compound. Sodium pentothal identified." As soon as the substance is exposed to my system, I realize what they tried to do. "They didn't give us anything deadly," I commented, placing the cup on the table. "But it's still really dirty to try to give us a truth serum." Edith sighs in surprise, bringing her hands to cover her mouth. Worried about her safety, I pulled her closer to me, but before I could act, a sadistic laugh caught my attention. "You are a very interesting man, Mr. Marcus," said an old voice, but full of authority. It was the tigress who had spoken to me. "Smart men with good instincts are rare, my dear rabbit," said the old black-robed tigress, looking in Edith's direction as she sat in the bobcat's place. "You are a fortunate woman," Edith stuttered, her bunny ears twitching slightly. "We are not a couple, Madame Sherhuan. Marcus and I are just friends. In fact, we are both single." Sherhuan's eyes narrowed, his expression impassive as he turned his head toward me, analyzing me. "A man like you single? That's something you don't see every day," she murmured, almost purring, leaning forward. "Usually the state would have married you off at age 17. I admit that when I walked through the laundry room, I loved the attention of the girls up there, but now with this old Chinese woman who tried to poison me and the Koalhinya, I'm getting really pissed off. It's time to fuck shit up," I thought with a sadistic smile. I quickly took out a common dagger from my inventory and threw it at the old tigress, using the minimum amount of strength to look like a weak, normal human. Swish! In addition to my powerful body, my brain is also beyond human capacity, so I was able to perceive everything that happened next perfectly. As the blade left my hand towards the tigress, two figures fell from the ceiling behind the spotlights. I couldn't see the first one properly, as she fell with her back to me with her arms open, receiving the knife at shoulder height. The second one jumped at me wielding a shiny blade. At a glance, I thought she was some kind of rat, but the membranes under her arms make it clear that she was a bat. "NOP!" I exclaimed in a dry tone, turning my body and kicking the bat charging at me. The figure protecting the tigress turned around, demonstrating that it was also a bat, growling in anger at me. "Yango!" she shouted angrily towards me. It was bad, but I don't speak coronavirus. I responded by blowing her a kiss. "Arr!" she growled, charging at me. But halfway through, her boss screamed, "住手!" At the same time, the bat stopped and turned to its master. "Leave," she said in a stern tone. In response, the bat ninja bends over, takes out the knife that was still lodged in her shoulder, and throws it towards my foot. Hee hee, ninjas protecting an Asian mobster. Kind of a cliche, right, Edith? I turn to the side and don't see the rabbit anywhere. "Edith, your friend fainted when you kicked my servant in the face," said the tigress, drinking tea as if nothing had happened. "Edith Nivea." I woke up with the bitter taste of green tea in my mouth, my head throbbing like a drum. Then I noticed the heat under my cheek and the constant rise and fall of a breast. "You woke up," said a soft and gentle voice. You're just as fluffy as I thought. I blinked and my vision began to clear, revealing Marcus's face, his emerald green eyes staring at me. What happened? I questioned myself mentally. Where am I? I felt a hand stroking my head, making me shift a little, and am I in Marcus' lap? Quickly, I stood up, my ears twitching nervously. What happened? I stuttered, my voice shaking with nervousness. Marcus opened his eyes, a soft smile playing on his lips. You passed out,
he said, smiling.
Then I gave you a little thing to wake you up. Your pockets are pretty deep for someone wearing such tight clothing, Mr. Marcus. Comments Madame Sherhuan. Stop looking at my ass, you horny grandma. Marcus retorts. Madame Sherhuan laughed with her velvet voice in response to Marcus's offense, as if he were a child throwing a tantrum. You are really curious, Marcus Carvalho. Few men have the audacity to talk to me like that. I sat at the table together with Marcus and Madame Sherhuan. I could feel the tension between the two in this very strange scene between a Latino man versus an elderly Chinese mobster tigress. I apologize for the poisoning attempt, Sherhuan said, his voice soft and calculated. I was intrigued by a man carrying such precious coins. So, you thought drugging us was the best way to find out more about us? Marcos asked in a calm and more intense tone. Sherhuan laughed, a low rumble in her chest. It was just a truth serum, a necessary precaution, Mr. Carvalho. In my line of work, trust is a rare commodity. You could have asked, I responded irritably, raising my voice for the first time since I sat down at the table. Sherhuan turned her gaze to stare directly at me, her eyes softening slightly. My dear bunny, the world is not as simple as it seems. But please, Mr. Carvalho, tell me how you knew the tea was poisoned. Marcus frowned, looking at the tigress, with zero inclination to answer her question. In fact, he looked like he wanted to punch her. I quickly placed a hand on his arm, drawing his attention to me. Please. I whispered to him. Be nice. His eyes were narrowed, as if he were ready for combat, but as soon as he felt my touch, he relaxed and responded to the tigress. The teapot was familiar to me, but it was your thumb on the teapot handle that caught my attention. Marcus commented in a dry tone. Then I noticed a small hole that your finger covered when you served mine and Edith's tea. I immediately remembered the assassin's teapot. Madame Sherhuan opened her eyes wide, surprised by Marcus's wit and intelligence. And how does a male like you know such information? The tigress asked, looking at Marcus with a worried tone. 9 gag. My jaw drops at Marcus' absurd response. He saved us thanks to an old 9 gag post. I thought in shock. I'm not familiar with that school of assassins. The tigress replied calmly, drinking from her cup. It's probably Western. The Westerner at the end of the sentence had a hint of disdain in her tone. Marcus leaned back in his chair, his eyes never leaving Sherhuan's face. So what now? Are we going to talk business, or are you going to try another trick? Sherhuan's lips curved into a slight smile, as if she hadn't had fun in a long time and had finally found something to distract herself. The documents that Mr. Marcus wants are not easy to obtain, she said in her voice as smooth as silk. They require the use of resources that I wish not to waste. But if it were impossible, you wouldn't have called us. Marcus replied, facing the elderly tigress with crossed arms. She smiles with delight at Marcus' attitude, as if his aggressive posture was something similar to a grumpy child. The most problematic part is that it will cost me favors with powerful people, explained Sherhuan, pouring another cup of tea. Money alone is not a good incentive to help you, Mr. Carvalho. Marcus sighed, tired from the day's events, and reached into his pocket. He took out a handful of gold coins and some shiny jewelry, placing them on the table in front of Madame Sherhuan. The old tigress Anthro looked at the offerings with complete indifference. Her tail swung lazily behind her, a clear sign of her disinterest. Is this to impress me? She spoke slowly, her voice drenched in disdain. I already said that money alone is not enough. I just wanted to make sure. Marcus said, taking the treasure and putting it in his pocket. What do you have in mind? Madame Sherhuan turns to me, her golden eyes shining with a mixture of amusement and disdain. He has a strong spirit, but he knows when to obey. Now that is an admirable quality in a male, says the tigress, amused by Marcus' irritation. Marcus growled in anger, but once again I intervened, this time placing a hand on his leg, trying to calm him down. He looks at me, his green eyes full of fury, but my presence seems to bring some peace. Sherhuan watches our interaction with an enigmatic smile, her tail swishing gently. Let's get straight to the point, Mr. Carvalho, she says, her voice soft and calculated. I have a proposal for you. A tournament. 3 fights against 3 different anthros. You don't have to win, just participate. In return, I will provide the documents you want. Marcus leans forward, his fingers drumming on the table. What if I win? Marcus asked, excited about a challenge in front of him. Sherhuan smiles, showing his sharp teeth. For every victory, I will grant a favor. 1 victory, and pay off the debts this bunny accumulated from her college and irresponsible purchases. How do you know? I asked with fear. I don't let people in my garden without first researching everything about them, said the tiger lady, purring. With a 2nd victory, I will introduce you to a trustworthy personal contact to buy your jewelry and take it to be sold outside the country. That way making it impossible to trace back to me? Asks Marcus. Exactly. She happily confirms that Marcus can follow her thoughts. Now the 3rd fight. It won't be easy. It will be against the most powerful warrior at my disposal. With a voracious smile, Marcus stares at the woman with his eyes focused on her. So, would it be fair for me to ask for your most precise possession? Marcus asks in a threatening tone. Madame Sherhuan widens her eyes, probably shocked by the audacity of the human in front of her. But instead of attacking him physically or with words, she laughed low and hoarse. If you enter to fight in my arena and win the 3 fights, I will give you the documents, debt settlement, the trusted contact, and my most precious possession, the flaming prism, my beloved fire opal gem. Marcus looks at me, as if seeking my approval. I feel a tightness in my chest, worried about what he might face, but also confident in his abilities. He is a hero after all. Seems fair, he says finally, turning to Sherhuan. But I want guarantees. I don't want to be deceived. Sherhuan nods, her golden eyes shining. You have my word, Mr. Carvalho. And my word here is law. Marcus sighs, running a hand through his hair. Let's do this. He responds, laughing. I do enjoy a tournament arc. I feel a mix of relief and worry. Marcus is strong, but what will he face? Sherhuan stands up, her imposing presence filling the room. Excellent, she says, extending her hand to Marcus. Marcus shakes her hand, sealing the deal. Soon after, Madame Sherhuan clapped her hands, the high-pitched sound echoing through the dimly lit room. From the shadows of the ceiling, 4 anthro bats dressed in ninja attire descended silently, their wings folded neatly behind them. Please accompany Mr. Carvalho to the locker room, Sherhuan ordered. The ninjas nodded in unison, their movements synchronized like a well-oiled machine. And you, dear Edith. Sherhuan turned to me, her golden eyes narrowing slightly. Please follow me. Marcus looked at me, a hint of concern in his eyes. I tried to offer a reassuring smile, but I could feel the tension in the air. This was a dangerous game, and separating us was not part of the plan. Large double doors on the opposite side of the garden opened, revealing a VIP lounge that looked like it had been transported straight from a Chinese imperial palace filled with men dressed in shiny silk robes. The room was covered in rich red silks and adorned with golden ornaments that glittered in the soft glow of the lanterns. Carved dragons and phoenixes danced across the walls, their scales and feathers painted in vibrant colors that seemed to move in the flickering light. Further ahead was a large opening with a decorated parapet. Sherhuan gestured for me to sit next to her on one of the ornate chairs pulled by a human wearing a tight green tunic. I sat in the ornate chair, my eyes drawn to the spectacle before me. The arena was an octagon surrounded by a fence. My heart pounded when I realized this was where Marcus would fight. Marcus, I whispered, my voice barely audible. I turned to Sherhuan. my eyes wide with worry and regret. Please, can't you just take his money? He doesn't need to fight and get hurt. Sherhuan laughed, her golden eyes shining with amusement. Oh, dear Edith. This isn't about money. It's about power and entertainment for me, my dear allies and precious enemies. I clenched my fists, trying to steady my voice. But he could get injured or die. Please, there must be another way. Sherhuan's laughter echoed through the room, a stark contrast to the opulent surroundings. If you're worried now, imagine how you'll feel when he loses and is, shall we say, used in front of the public? My heart stops for a second. Used? I ask, fearing the answer. A sadistic and malicious smile painted the tigress's face, staring at me with voracious eyes. One of the rules of my arena is that the loser is humiliated by the winner. And with a male as charming as Marcus as an opponent, I'm even worried about what my female fighters might do to him. I stood there, frozen, as Sherhuan's words echoed in my mind. Humiliated by the winner. The room seemed to spin, and the opulent decorations blurred into a chaotic whirlwind. My heart pounded in my chest, each beat a painful reminder of the reality I couldn't escape. No, I shout desperately. You can't do that to him. Sherhuan leaned back in her chair, a smug smile playing on her lips. Oh, my dear Edith, I assure you, it is quite a spectacle. The crowd loves it. I clenched my fists, nails digging into my palms. He's not just a entertainment for you. Humph, she huffed irritably. This Western mentality of gender equality is very irritating. He agreed to participate, and so he will face the consequences if he loses. Tears welled up in my eyes, but I refused to let them fall. I couldn't show weakness, not in front of her. My stomach turned, and I felt a wave of nausea. When does the first fight start? I asked, my voice steady despite the turmoil inside me. As if answering my question, a bombastic female voice echoed throughout the arena. A lemming presenter began to speak. Ladies and gentlemen, anthros and human escorts, welcome to Chicago's hottest event. Tonight, we have an incomparable show for you. One human, a true gladiator, will face 3 of our most formidable anthros. The arena fell silent as the announcer's voice echoed through the space, his words creating anticipation. A figure wrapped in a gray cloak emerged from the shadows, walking confidently towards the center of the arena. The crowd held its breath, waiting for the revelation. We present to you the challenger. As dangerous as he is beautiful, the strongest man in the world, the Dragon Warrior. The figure threw the cape aside dramatically, revealing Marcus in tight black swim trunks and a green dragon mask. The crowd erupted in cheers and whistles, the atmosphere electric with excitement. My heart pounded in my chest as I watched Marcus standing tall and proud, his muscles glistening under the arena lights. As the announcer continued to hype the crowd, I couldn't take my eyes off Marcus. He was confident, his gaze scanning the arena as if sizing up his opponents. The thought of him getting hurt, or worse, was unbearable. I had to do something, anything to stop this. But he looks so good in swim trunks, I think, drooling a little from the corner of my mouth. And now, please welcome our first challenger. Hailing from the wilds of the American Southwest, she is known for her ferocity and cunning. She is the queen of chaos, the voracious and unique. Honey Havoc. The crowd erupted in applause as a figure emerged from the shadows. Honey Havoc, a small, muscular anthro badger, stepped into the light. His fur was a mix of black and white stripes, and his eyes glowed with a wild intensity. She wore a tight swimsuit highlighting her curves and muscles. Marcus stood in the center of the arena, his muscles tense, his gaze fixed on Honey Havoc. I could see the tension in his body, the way his fists clenched and unclenched, but it was his eyes that really worried me. They were wide-eyed, almost glassy, and he seemed completely transfixed, as if he had seen a ghost. Marcus. I whisper worriedly. I gripped the arms of my chair. This wasn't the confident, fearless Marcus I knew. Something is wrong. Fight! The announcer shouted, getting out of the way of the fighters. Honey Havoc circled Marcus like a predator, her eyes glowing with a savage intensity. She was smaller than Marcus, but her muscles were taut and powerful, her movements fluid and precise. She had a mischievous smile, as if she could sense Marcus's fear and was reveling in it. Fresh meat. She teased with her tongue out, her voice a low growl. Let's see if you can handle a few bites. Marcus was frozen. It seemed like his fear was holding him captive. Honey Havoc lunged forward, her claws extended, her teeth bared in a snarl. Marcus shudders, his body instinctively moving forward as he grabs his opponent and lifts her off the ground. The biggest surprise wasn't Marcus lifting Honey Havoc off the ground, but rather what he shouted next. "You are so cute and cuddly," he says, hugging his opponent tightly. The crowd laughs and applauds, surprised by Marcus's unexpected tenderness. Honey Havoc, meanwhile, looks momentarily confused, her eyes wide with surprise. She tries to break free, but Marcus holds her tight, his eyes shining with a mix of joy and affection. Honey Havoc's reaction was immediate and brutal. Arr! With a furious growl, she opened her mouth and sank her sharp teeth into Marcus's shoulder. Marcus screamed, pain ripping through him like a knife. Scared, his instincts took over. With a sudden movement, he threw Honey Havoc to the ground.
POF.
Before she can even try to get up, Marcus steps on her, his foot pressing her into the ground like she's a cockroach. The crowd was silent for a moment, shocked by the sudden brutality. Anthro's motionless body on the floor kept the uncomfortable silence, everyone fearing that the worst had happened. Marcus' eyes widened, the realization of what he had done sinking in. He took a step back, his foot lifting off Honey Havoc's body. He knelt down, his hands shaking as he reached for her wrist. The arena held its breath, awaiting its verdict. "She's alive," Marcus shouted, his voice echoing throughout the arena. A collective sigh of relief took over the crowd as Marcus began to laugh in relief. Now, as usual, the winner can humiliate his opponent however he wishes, says the announcer. Marcus looked at Honey Havoc, his brow furrowed in confusion, but he shook his head and managed to focus again. "Can I sit her on my lap and brush her hair?" The lemming announcer stutters, her eyes widening in surprise. "Yes, that's allowed." Marcus paused, his gaze shifting between Honey Havoc and the crowd. He seemed to be considering the offer. The arena held its breath, waiting for his decision. "No," he said finally, his voice firm. "I won't do anything to her." The crowd murmured in surprise, their whispers filling the arena. "Any particular reason?" asks the curious lemming. "What kind of scumbag motherfucker humiliates someone unconscious in public?" Marcus asks indignantly. "That sounds like something an anime villain would do dash." "No, a hentai villain." A smile spread across my face. I was so proud of his decision. Marcus demonstrated that in addition to the strength of a hero, he also has the honor of one. "I don't know how to answer that," says the presenter. "Can we go to the next fight?" Marcus asks, clasping his hands. Uncertain, the presenter wanted to question the prudence of the action due to the injury to Marcus' shoulder. But strangely, it was already healed, and its only remnant was a small spot of blood. Shrugging her shoulders, the lemming returned to his work. "Ladies and gentlemen, prepare yourselves for the most powerful force to ever enter the ring. She is a living legend, a powerhouse on a mission to dominate. Make way for the indomitable, the unstoppable, Bulldozer." The ground shook beneath my feet, and I felt a shiver run down my spine. The entrance to the arena darkened, and then, emerging from the shadows, an imposing figure appeared. Bulldozer, an anthro rhinoceros, lumbered towards the center of the octagon. "No," I murmured in fear. She was huge, her rough gray skin glowing under the lights. Her muscles were tense and powerful, as if they were carved from granite. Every step she took made the ground shake, and her presence was so dominant that it seemed to suck the air out of the arena. Her eyes, small and penetrating, fixed on Marcus with frightening intensity. Marcus, still in the center of the arena, seemed tiny compared to the monstrous size of his opponent. But even with the titanic difference between the two, he was smiling voraciously. Other than the slight havoc smell, you're as good as new. Bulldozer muttered, licking her lips lasciviously. I'm going to love getting you dirty in front of everyone. No fucking way, you skinny Lizo. Marcus growled, stretching his arms. Fight.
I hope you enjoyed my work. If you'd like more, check out the links in the video description. Goodbye for now.